All right, we are live. Hey, everyone, welcome to the Echo Means Business monthly live stream. My name is Mark Thomas. I run the YouTube channel Mark Thomas Builder. I'm actually on all different platforms under Mark Thomas Builder. So I'm based here near Lansing, Michigan, and I have a lot of experience running a lawn care business running a home as a home builder, the majority of my career. And I run chainsaws in a good deal of those different things that I do. And I also have a couple guests from Echo Means Business. So I have Phil Ajay, and he is not in, he's coming back. There's Phil, and
There I
Brian
am.
Linson. All right, great. So, Brian, if you want to, before I say that, so today we're going to be talking about chainsaws. And we have some things that we're planning on talking about, but we welcome you to bring some questions to us, and we'll do our best to answer all those in the first 30. We're going to be here for 30 minutes, so we'll try to get to everything as much as possible. So I'll start off and ask Brian if you can introduce yourself and where you're from.
Sure. Well, my name is Brian. I am the owner and operator of BL Landscapes. We're based out of off Whidbey Island, Washington, which is about halfway between Seattle and the Canadian border. So we do a lot of hardscapes, a lot of landscape design, install, that type of work. So I also have a background. I've been in the tree care industry before, custom homes, all of that kind of stuff. And now we just mainly focus on, like I said, landscaping, hardscapes, and softscapes.
All right, great. How about you, Phil?
Yeah, so I'm Phil Leger from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. I've been running my tree care business for 5 years now, a landscaping business for the previous 11 years. So altogether, I'm 36. I started when I was 20. Do the math. That's 16 years of in the green industry officially as a business owner. But before that, used to cut lawns around the neighborhood with my twin brother, and always been in the green industry for a source of income. I got 8 employees now, and it's a lot of fun. We do mostly tree work. So a lot more active chainsaws these days, but I've always had them kicking around the truck since day one. And it's honestly, if you get to work outside every single day, in my opinion, in the best work environment that someone could ever wish for.
Yeah, today we have such a beautiful day here. I'm just was outside most of the day and just so thankful that I can be out there, not
Mm.
inside. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Why don't we talk just a minute about like the different chainsaws that we have? I'm kind of a collector. I started off with like one chainsaw. I grew up with the home with a fireplace. So my dad and I used to spend a lot of weekends going out, and we had a tri-level house, so we would use a chainsaw to heat that lower level. It was kind of below ground and we could never keep it warm, so we just constantly were running. We had a huge log pile that was delivered to us, and we just spent years trying to tackle that log pile. So we spent a lot of time running that chainsaw. Then from there I just started collecting, and now I have probably more chainsaws than I can count. So I'm wondering, like, how, how are you guys, Brian, like with chainsaws? Do you have a couple for your business, or do you collect some, or
Yeah.
what can you
So
say?
I kind of similar story. Growing up, we lived a bit out of town. We had 10 acres with mostly alder trees, and we heated our house completely with the wood stove growing up. So a lot of summers spent cutting firewood, splitting firewood. So, I grew up running chainsaws. My dad was very well versed, so he taught me a lot growing up. Same thing, cut firewood all summer to last through the winters. And then uh, I spent a couple years working for a tree company and mostly as a groundsman, but did a lot of work in that regard with chainsaws. And now, for the past almost 15 years, we've been running our landscape business. Um, and in my industry now, like I said, I do use a few chainsaws. Most of our work is actually done um, with my best friend here. This little
Ah,
this little guy is my hero. It's a nice It runs great. It does most of what we need it to do. I also have a couple bigger chainsaws. Uh, when we need to say we use logs sometimes in our water features and stuff. So we'll get specialty logs that we can cut up and get into our water features. But we do a lot of our chainsaw work is actually like clearing roots out of the ground when we're doing prep for paver patios and stuff. Almost everyone in our area has big trees in their yard and in their landscape, so we are constantly having to deal with that kind of stuff. We also, pretty regularly we limb up trees, just getting the canopies lifted up to where it's a nice clean look and easy access for mowing and all of that. So that's we like I said, I have 3 or 4 saws of different sizes, nothing too huge, but typically our go-to is this little guy.
So do you keep the saw with you like every day, or do you have to plan ahead and bring it with you when you have
Yeah,
something
so
come up?
our little saw pretty much stays in the truck all the time. Like I said, for us, it's a lot easier to, like I said, a lot of it is when we're doing hardscape prep and we're digging down to put in base and stuff. Oftentimes run into roots in the ground, even if there's not any trees nearby. So the little saw stays with us pretty much all the time.
Okay.
It's easy, small, compact. It fits right in our trailer with everything else that we have going on. So it's pretty much a staple.
Yeah. Yeah. I've used that small saw, and it's amazing what I did a storm cleanup and how much I could. This tree like just blew over this huge Norway maple, and how much I could get limbed up with just that small saw. It just was very fast and efficient. So Phil, I know I've talked with you in the past, and you have quite a collection that I was not expecting you had that many saws. So can you tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about your experience, like starting off with saws and what you have?
Well, I can thank my dad for putting the fear of God in me regarding chainsaws, because it's the first thing you got to do concerning a chainsaw is have a healthy fear about it. If you're not careful, or you don't understand how dangerous this saw could be, you will likely get injured, or your poor influence will cause somebody else to get an injury in their lifetime. It goes without saying that there are many. You can spend a lot of time online looking at famous YouTubers or people that use chainsaws on a regular basis, and you want to be like them, and you'll see poor chainsaw practice. And I highly consult against that. We have a strong, strong safety policy in our company when it comes to that. We've eradicated bad habits from some climbers that have joined us that have had bad techniques that could have led to injuries. And it's our motto going forward. A family friend growing up was up a ladder. I was young. I was maybe 10 years old, and he was at the time 18. And he cut his leg while he was climbing with a chainsaw, and apparently it was just dangling by a thread. And the doctor, for some
Wow.
reason, decided to stay at the hospital, and he was the only doctor that was able to put his leg back together, like in the province, I guess, because it was a rural hospital. Anyways, he's still walking today with a bit of a limp. But my dad told us that story, and I know the guy personally, and that always put a fear of me into me about the importance of chainsaw safety. My dad never really let us use any chainsaws until we were 18. He wanted us to, be like a bit more responsible, and I appreciate that. And since then, I've used some of them throughout the years in my business without PPE, knowing about it without PPE. But as we started getting more serious, as James joined our company, he's an arborist, and brought tree work into Vision Landscapes, we started. It was 100% right off the bat. All right, well, we're going to be doing PPE if we're going to have chainsaws. And our chainsaw collection has grown. At our shop right now, if we take out all the saws and put them on the bench, first of all, the bench is too small, and we'll have 30 chainsaws ranging from 25 to 125 cc's. We love to have, like I say, a chainsaw for every occasion. If you're cutting down ash, a gas top handle will be better. If you're just pruning a small tree, it can either have a light battery top handle or that saw like you had right there, the 2511. Brian, I would talk about this later, but Echo makes a rear handle version of that 2511. I really think you should look into that for 2 reasons. For employees, it's great because they can't one-hand it. They have to use 2 hands on the saw, so automatically that's safer. And 2, the ergonomics of a 2-handed chainsaw whenever you're on the ground, if you're not climbing, is a lot easier, and it's a lot less awkward on your hands and wrists. to have like a proper rear handle. So look into that from Echo. It's a 2511 not TN. I think it's just the N, I guess, because there's no top handle part. But yeah, it's really cool saw that you have there. I have it as well. I love the improvements they've made on it. It's a little whippersnapper. But yeah, so long story short, be wary of chainsaws. They can hurt you. I mean, even with PPE, these saws that we have, like 90 cc to 120 cc, they're not going to stop. Like no PPE can stop that, but it can definitely slow down the chain speed, and like it'll still cut your leg, but it won't go through.
I definitely agree with all of that. Um, same way I was instilled with a very, very healthy respect for chainsaws. Probably one of the most dangerous pieces of equipment that you can possibly use. And so we're really big on that too. Lots of training. Anytime anybody is going to even come near a saw, all of the proper PPE. It is scary how fragile life can be, and over the years, I have actually lost a friend who was in the wrong spot at the wrong time when trees were being topped. I've seen people that have, it only takes a millisecond and serious damage can be incurred. So I definitely think that's one of the top priorities when you're even thinking about running a saw is just being knowledgeable and being trained properly and knowing just how dangerous they really are.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's something that I read, and I do a lot of tool reviews, so I read a lot of owner's manuals trying to get familiar with the new tools. And one thing that I've seen a lot of companies starting to say lately, maybe they've said it for a while, but don't let the complacency and like the routine of using a tool, when you're getting so familiar with it, you don't think about how you kind of lose. Just don't, yeah, trying to repeat exactly how they say it, but don't be so overconfident in it that you don't think you're going to get hurt. I was talking with a friend a couple weeks ago, and he was telling me a story of somebody that runs a table saw all the time and just happened to say, "Oh yeah, he's fine. He knows how to run the table saw," and had an accident happen. So that's one thing that I try to do is not have any distractions, like wearing like earbuds or music or listening to podcasts, things like that. When I'm doing dangerous stuff like that, I feel like I just need to be laser focused in that. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mark. I think in this industry, like people might look at us, oh, they look like they make it look so easy. Well, there's years of practice behind that, and even us, like we'll go through regular trainings every month. We'll touch up on safety skills, especially around the chipper. I mean, the tree care industry is one of the most dangerous industries in the world, and like you mentioned, like people die in this industry all the time. Unfortunately, that's why with chainsaws, one cool thing I mean, we make it do it look easy, and they are loud. There's some advantage to having battery saws that will be a bit quieter for safety reasons, but we all have intercom systems when a chainsaw is running, and almost all time. So there's a lot more communication. I find like these accidents that happen oftentimes are from a lack of communication, or from not being able to hear each other properly over these loud chainsaws. So we have to see an issue that is being caused, and there are solutions to mitigate risks and lower chances of injury.
how long have those intercom systems been around or been available
So we've
for
been,
tree guys?
I'd say like past 5, 7 years. They started off as essentially people DIY themselves. I was Sena, the big company is Sena, SENA. They do motorcycle attachments, like motorcycle helmets. So they would take these comm
Hmm.
systems, splice them onto the helmets, and they would last a year because the wiring would we're a lot more rough with our helmets than a motorcycler would be. But then since then, Peltor has come out of kits, Husqvarna and Still, that clip directly into stock helmets like Kask or Prodos, and our comms are 600 US. They're about $1,000 Canadian each. Like they're very expensive, but they work amazing, and I would not replace that for anything. Like safety is paramount, and loud chainsaws and people yelling and this and that will lead to increase chances of injury. Like somebody an apprentice could be making a cut, and you could be far away watching him, and you could guide him through every single step of the way. Or if he's going to do something that could be dangerous and a piece is going to roll on him,
Hmm.
you can quickly stop things from a distance, which is so key. You can't hear over a chainsaw, right? When you start cutting, you get into your groove, but it's nice to have someone in your ear. So yeah, it's 5 to 7 years they've been around, and yeah, they're expensive, but they are 100% worth it.
Okay, great. I want to get to a topic about battery versus gas in a second, but before we do, we have a comment. So I can't actually see who left the comment, but it's how often should I sharpen my chains? And Phil, I'll ask you this because I know before we went live, we were just talking about sharpening. And what's better, sharpening by hand or by machine?
So, how often you should sharpen your chain? I mean, you'll know if
That was
you're
Scott.
using. Okay,
Sorry,
uh,
sorry, that was by Scott. Sorry, I just
Scott.
saw it
All
come
right,
up.
hey Scott.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're using a chainsaw often, as soon as it's dull, you're gonna hit your saw. We have a policy. We don't like to sharpen on site because we find that's a waste of time. We'll have. Well, that's why we have 5 chainsaws on the truck. If you have a dull saw, you're gonna grab another one instead of spending the time and filing there on site. Let's get the job done. We can sharpen at the shop the next morning or on a rain day. We also have like a rotation of chains so that if it's dull, we can do a quick swap. It's a lot quicker to swap a chain than to fully sharpen it. If you're like an average homeowner and you're doing things around your house, you might sharpen your chain once a year. Or you might be like some people that, for example, they don't like sharpening and they'll just put a new chain on, which if you do the math, like a $20 chain to buy or a $10 chain to sharpen, it's peanuts, right? It's sometimes a lot more convenient to have a whole bunch of chains and you'll just swap it out or get rid of it whenever it's completely dull. But like if you're cutting an ash tree, you'll cut your whole tree down with your top handle, for example, and you're gonna want to sharpen that right away. You're gonna notice a difference right away because it will eat away at the chain a lot quicker. Um, but us, for example, we'll have sharpened days maybe once every week, once every 2 weeks as a company because we're not using them all every single day. So if we know one is a bit duller, we'll use it for, like Brian said, for example, if you have to do more ground level stuff on the ground where you have increased chance of nicking rocks or things in the ground or surface level or like chain link fences, we'll use the scrap saws that are like either on their last breath for the chain. We're not going to put a brand new pristine chain on those scrappy jobs. So
Mhm.
sharpen. As soon as you're frustrated, sharpen. As soon as something's
Okay.
not cutting, and you can tell if it's super fine dust whenever you're cutting, it's probably not cutting properly. You want to see that little like those flakes coming up, those corn flakes.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
good.
that's what I was just gonna say. It's real for us. It's pretty easy to tell as soon as those chips start getting small and looking more like sawdust than actual chips. That's a sure sign that your saw is ready to be sharpened. And it is for us. We have. I am a stickler. Like I said, we use ours a lot for cutting out roots and stuff. We will dig completely around them and then wash them to get them as clean as we can before we start cutting through there, just to try to avoid any chance of hitting dirt or rocks. But even with that being said, around here we have we're on an island. There's a lot of bluff homes, and on the bluff especially, there are a lot of trees. It seems like, especially the pine trees, that they actually will. The wood is constantly bombarded by sand blowing up the bluff, and the trees will actually be impregnated with sand, and
Oh,
and it's
wow.
amazing. You can see. I mean, not only is the wood 10 times heavier than a normal piece of wood, but it is amazing how fast it will dull your chain. I mean, it's just you can get into bucking rounds and get 3 or 4 rounds, and your chain is already needing to be sharpened. So um, I definitely think for the average people who aren't using a chainsaw a lot, or even guys who aren't that experienced with them, that the shavings are definitely a key indicator of whether or not it's time to sharpen your saw.
We're going to get to the questions in a second again, but I want to get to battery versus gas. And I'll just ask you first, Brian. I know Phil has a lot to say on that. So I'll ask you, do you have a preference between one or the other with your chainsaws?
So it's kind of like for me, it's kind of like the rest of the industry tools that we use. I would say nowadays that the battery powered saws are far superior than they used to be. And I do think there's definitely a time and a place for them. Like the smaller saws, if you're doing occasional trimming or just limbing up some stuff, I think they work great. I think as far as everything else, if you're looking to be using your saw on more of a regular basis, we still prefer our gas saws.
I was going to just interject before I hand over to Phil. My favorite time to have, or when battery saws first came to the scene, when I rented a big wood chipper, I have my hearing protection on, and you're dragging a big limb up, and it's not going in. You have to quick trim something up. It's nice to just have your battery saw somewhere nearby where you can just get it, unlock, and then just cut. You don't have to start it and listen and feel for it to start vibrating. You can just, right away just do your cuts. It's much more efficient that way. So that was one of the very first advantages that I saw with battery. There's a lot more, but I'll let Phil talk about it. So what do you think, Phil?
You know I'm going to take up the next 10 minutes of airtime, right? But I'll try to be short. But let's talk about 3 points. Like for landscapers, what I think for a ground crew and for a seasoned climber, and like what pros and cons are. So a landscaper that might not use a chainsaw all the time, like let's forego PPE. I mean, we recommended being there. Get a pair of chaps on your truck. Chainsaw boots would be a separate thing, but at least get a pair of chaps on if you're going to use a chainsaw, because that's where the most of the injuries will be on your legs. If you're not going to be using a chainsaw all that often, having a battery one would be convenient. Let's say you use the Still platform, the Echo platform, even Eagle or whatever. If you're constantly using a battery platform of tools in and out of your trailer doing maintenance, having a battery saw that's not a gas saw that's sitting around for months, and then the carburetor gets jammed and you can't fire it up, and then you throw it in the truck and you don't want to use it, right? So if it's something that's not going to get used that often, you'll have an easier time with the battery saw. But if you're not invested heavily in battery yet, I wouldn't necessarily just recommend having a battery saw on its own and having to figure out its charging situation and whatnot in your trailer setup. If you're still gas, get a gas setup. You're going to have that mixed oil. You're going to have that stuff with you on your truck already. So you're going to kind of be situated already in that regard. And you probably know your way around engines, and you probably know your way how to start a temperamental saw that might be clogged up a little bit. One idea to do is to use like a premix gas combo. We like to use Red Armor mixed oil, which has like a stabilizer in it, which will cause the gas not to go bad in that regard. So there's pros and cons for like a landscaper. We always had gas saws for the longest time in the landscaping days, and I remember I had a Still like MS-170, and I hated the thing. I could never get that thing to start. It'd be one thing getting clogged after the others because I didn't really use it enough. If I had a battery top handle, I think it would have, I don't know, maybe I'd have a leg missing, so maybe it was a good thing. For a ground crew, let's say like you're like you said, limbing limbs by the chipper, or you have a new guy that might not be super confident with starting a chainsaw. There's one thing about like starting a chainsaw, and there's a whole other thing about operating it. And starting will come with practice, but that's where things can go bad. Like you break a cord and then the saw's out of commission for the day, or you could stub it on the ground while you're starting it and dull it. So if you have a saw that someone can properly just learn how to make cuts in a controlled, quieter fashion, we love having battery rear handles. We have Husqvarna 540s. They have a new 542, which is 50 cc equivalent. That's absolutely ridiculous. So having like a ground saw rear handle that's battery is imperative for a company. We love those. And then there's the climber who's going up in the tree to do work. They can choose a gas, or they can choose a battery top handle. It's really going to go on, like I like to think things over a long period, right? If you have to do a removal and you're constantly having to fire up that saw nonstop as you're climbing because you don't want to keep it on your hip at all times, you might start that saw 30-40 times in a day, if not more, on a regular basis. That will run some extra hours on your shoulders. I've heard climbers have such like a hard time starting a chainsaw after many years of repeated action. And then whenever they finally got their hands on a battery top handle, they were so relieved that they didn't have to fight to start a saw in a tree. That can get frustrating as well. You have enough things to think about up in a canopy that you should not have to fight to start a saw. Now thankfully the Husqvarna 542 IXP has a clutch. Echo has also like these nice little more nimble battery top handles as well, like for quick little pruning saws. But as far as like big boy battery chainsaws in the tree, I've tried the Stills, I've tried the Echoes, I've tried the Husqvarnas, and the Husqvarna is the most forestry ready professional level 50cc equivalent top handle saw with a clutch, so you don't have to fire that thing up. It's a tank. It's heavy. If you're just gonna go prune, I'd rather take like the little Echo DCS 2500. That thing is so tiny, right? Have you guys seen that one yet? I'm sure you have. It's the tiny little Echo saw, and that's great just to go up and down a tree. But there are options. You don't need to have big 50cc gas saws in the tree anymore. You can work your way down with a battery saw until you get to bigger wood, and then you might call up for a gas saw. So there's alternatives to the traditional methods of gas saws in a tree. Using that battery saw, you're not gonna have fumes by your face all day. Yeah, you're gonna run out of battery, but you can charge a battery quicker than you can burn through one. So keep 2 on the truck.
That's great.
Yeah, you definitely covered it all. So yeah, that's good. There was a question if you've seen any of the Temu chainsaws out in the field. I'm not sure what that TEMU.
Yeah,
Does that
that's
ring a
like
bell?
yeah, that's like it's like Amazon in China or something. It's like the Alibaba Express or whatever it's called, AliExpress. It's Temu's like you can buy a chainsaw for $10 and they'll ship
Yeah,
it from China. You might have to wait. You might have to wait 2 months, but no, I have not seen any out here. If you look
I
at
haven't
chainsaw,
either.
I think Jacob Rogers and Chainsaw Jenna, they demoed some pink versions of these chainsaws. You'll see it. It's like $100. You can get a 70cc rear handle. I've not seen any out here where I live, but I think that if you're serious about it and you don't want any headaches, you'll go for a brand name, go for a manufacturer that's been making chainsaws for a while.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point. What would be a good saw to have on hand for your typical late duty branch cleanup? I just want to say hi to Abigail and Jacqueline. Yeah, I'd say battery powered for that, right? For your light duty cleanup.
Yeah,
You guys
like
have a
I'd say a rear hand, like a battery powered rear handle. If you can get your hands on one of those, that would be great. Like those are great. Like if you're a homeowner, if you don't want to have to fuss at starting the saw, because like that's half the problem. If you give someone a chainsaw, they don't know how to. There's starting and using it. If you can get at the starting part and then get it simplified, just learn how to use it safely, and you'll be good to go. So, if you want something light, I think Echo makes a light one, a super light. I don't know the model number. But the rear handle, if you're doing ground cleanup, like Brian, can you show your top handle again?
Uh-huh.
I know
Yeah.
I know it's a gas saw, but hold it if you will with like the 2 hands there, and you'll see like the orientation of your hands is like it's a little awkward for many different movements. You don't have as much. You have more nimbleness around the saw, but you don't have as much control whenever you're going up. Like having a rear handle, having your hands a bit further apart, will improve that. So I'd recommend a rear handle saw. Um, Depends what battery platform you're using. There's a saw for the occasion. It still has the 300 version. Husqvarna has the 542s. Ego has a 60cc. I own that saw. It's too heavy to be honest with you. It's ridiculously heavy. The Ego battery rear handle, but it's 60cc equivalent. It can absolutely cut.
oh,
It's good for limbing. It's not good for sideways cuts. The saw weighs 15 pounds. It's way too heavy.
that's a lot. Brian, do you run a pole saw at all
Yeah, so pole
in your
saws are
landscaping?
great. We use pole saws a lot. Again, back to the high bluff property. So there's a lot of stuff that the pole saws are great for us, for especially for trimming native shrubbery and topping off that kind of stuff, because these houses, they want to keep their view, but you can't clear bluffs. So basically, keeping things cut just where you still have a nice view and everything. The pole saws are great because there's no need to harness up and tie off to go over the bluff to cut the shrubbery. So the nice thing with pole saws is that you can reach out and get way out there and get those things topped, so that they keep their view without the expense of all the expense and the danger of roping off and going over the bluff.
How about you, Phil? Do you run a pole saw?
Yeah, we do. I'll also introduce that by saying pole saws can almost be more dangerous than chainsaws because
Yeah, sure.
you gotta worry about stuff riding down that pole and smacking you in the head or smacking you in the hands. If you're gonna use a pole saw
Huh.
above your head, I'd recommend steel toes. Your chainsaw chaps are a bit more optional, but I would recommend a helmet with a visor. I can't stress how many times I've had my visor on and a little branch is gonna even you're cutting a little branch, but it's just gonna fly at you and smack you in the face. You go, oh, thankfully I had my visor.
Hmm.
And so yeah,
Definitely.
we use battery pole saws. We don't have any gas pole saws. Um, we use a Milwaukee one. We use some Husqvarna ones as well. We have two ones. We have like a long telescopic ones for reaching far, and it seems like all these companies are all bragging about who's got the longest pole saw, and that's great. But what you also have to realize is small ones are good as well. We have these shorter ones, which are really good for nimble stuff on top of a ladder. You don't want to have a 15-foot pole saw all the time. If you're topping a hedge that's close to you, a shorter pole saw is a real gift. It weighs 5 pounds less. It's under 10 pounds. Husqvarna has a model. Other companies have models as well. They're great. So there's a pole saw for each occasion, but I can't stress enough if you're going to use one, be very careful. Get into a habit of like undercutting and look up some YouTube videos on how to use one safely. Maybe I'll have to make a video as well. But there's a way how to undercut to not pinch your bar, and kind of like push the piece down as you're cutting to get it away from you. And never cut anything that's directly over your head. If it's directly over your head, you should be in the tree. One more thing,
I,
if you're lumbing up something with a pole saw, try to get up and close at the end with a proper chainsaw to make a nice cut at the collar. Because too many times you'll like do a flush cut up against a tree and you'll end up harming the tree or cutting into that area of the tree that will try to seal naturally. So a pole saw is quick, efficient, but it's not accurate. It will not make a nice finish cut. So look up how to make proper pruning cuts and get up and close there with a chainsaw, either on a ladder or hire an arborist to go up there and finish those cuts off for you.
I agree.
That's a
Those
good
are
point.
all it's all really great points. The only other thing I would add to that with the pole saws, especially one thing that I've noticed is really being aware of your surroundings and making sure that other guys are not in your way or near you.
Good point. All right, so we're running towards the end of our half hour. So I'll go back to you, Phil. Is there anything, last thing you want to say before that you didn't get to mention?
Yeah, if your gas chainsaw is orange, it's probably a good one. That's just a joke. They almost all have orange on them in some way, shape, or form. It has to do for visibility as well. Regarding like what chainsaw is the best, I'm a huge believer in whoever can give you best service. All major companies, be it Stihl, Echo, Husqvarna, these big guys, they make every range of chainsaw from like 20 to 100 cc chainsaws, right? Um, Stella and Husqvarna are like a bit more forestry orientated, and that's fine. But if you have a local Echo dealer, if you have a local Ego dealer, whoever can give you the best service for your equipment, I would highly recommend go to them. Uh, Go to them who can they can repair your chainsaw if you don't really know what you're doing in that regard. They'll probably sell PPE. I'm surprised that big box stores don't have PPE for sale. They have helmets maybe, but big box stores like Home Depot and more, they don't have PPE for sale beside chainsaws. If I was running the show, I would have, you want to buy a chainsaw? It's coming with PPE. 100%. You have to pay for it. And if you don't use it, at least you've paid for it and you've been warned. You've been warned visually and through your wallet because you've had to dish out extra money. So chainsaws would be like a black market event to buy
Hmm.
cash used chainsaws.
That's a good point. All right, how about you, Brian? What else?
Yeah, I
Any
mean,
last
I
things?
think I would just reiterate the same thing that Phil's saying. I think the biggest things when it comes to chainsaws all around is proper training and PPE. If you don't know how to use a chainsaw, find someone who does, and at least at the very least, watch videos. Try to learn how to use them, and you can really just never be too careful. And even for these experienced guys, like Phil was saying before, complacency is your worst enemy. It only takes a second. Anytime you got a chainsaw in your hands, no matter what it is, whether you're just pruning a tree in your yard or limbing something up, whatever it is, safety is really the top priority.
Yep, good point. Yeah, I always try to think through like when I'm cutting something, and every once in a while there's something that I wasn't quite expecting, and I felt like I've spent a lot of time in the woods and know what to expect, but just yeah, it's always just thinking it through as much as you can and looking at it from all the different angles so you're not caught off guard. So all
Definitely.
right, so the next live stream is going to be September 17th with Ryan Rustin, and the topic is going to be how to prepare for the upcoming Equip Expo. It's going to be in Louisville, Kentucky. So I'm going to be there. Are you guys going to be there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how
I
about you, Brian?
I don't think I'm going to be making it this year. I would like to, but we are just completely slammed.
Okay, I understand. For you, it's a long flight. I'm not sure, Phil,
Yeah.
how long is your flight there?
It's gonna be like a layover in Detroit, and then I'm popping down to. So it's like five. No, that's like it's like maybe 2 + 2. It's not a very long flight. So
Okay, not coming all the way across, like for you, Brian, the United States. So
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
I really would like to be there this year, but we're shooting for next year.
okay, all right. Well, sounds good. Yeah, so I think that topic, I think it's going to be a really good one, how to prepare, because I often feel like when I've gone to different ones at the very end, I think that, man, I wish I would have gone here, wish I would have gone there, and I missed out. So having a list or a checklist or something, so you make sure you get to those places that you want to visit, because I think the time goes fast. You're walking through, you run into people, and next thing you know, you're just the time just goes by, and it's the end of the afternoon, and you missed out on some of the things you wanted to do. So, I mean, it's great doing that too, but just if you really want to see some things, have a checklist. So, and I'm interested to hear what he has to say on that. And then, yeah, I want to just thank Echo. So if you want to find out more, go to echomeansbusiness.com, and you can also find them, I'm sure if you're watching here, on all the different platforms. So I believe that this is where we're going to wrap it up here. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in and all your questions, and for Phil and Brian for joining me. It's been a great discussion. So that's it for now, friends.